and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast Deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello guys, and welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. And once again, we are still out here on the East Coast at the current time of recording this, and I've got a very good friend of mine with me, Deckhand Jesse Roche. Jesse, how are you today?
Great, thanks for having me, and welcome to the North Shore of Massachusetts.
Well, hey, thanks for setting up a lot of these interviews for us. You know, looks like we're going to have quite a few to knock out, but I definitely wanted to get your story and get going. You've been an avid listener for a long time, so you know exactly what I'm going to ask, so why don't you just dive in?
Sure. Well, I was born actually not too far from here in Nashua, New Hampshire, and my father was an environmental scientist and focused in the marine studies, so I was always on the coast, whether it would be up on Lake Ontario when I was real young and right down to the Connecticut shoreline to Long Island Sound, and I'd go out on boats with him and had a sailboat growing up, and instead of going to places like Disney World, we'd go to natural places like the Minnesota Boundary Waters and end up 100 miles from civilization, canoeing and fishing. So it's just always kind of been in me. And then from there, I took it to the sports fishing world with kayak fishing with Hobie and Ocean Kayak, and I had some sponsorships with them. And ended up in radio for about 10 years doing music radio, and then I decided, well, this is getting kind of old, and I asked the general management if I could delve into a fishing radio show, and they agreed, and I ended up getting some advertisers, so that show went on for a while. And then through there, I had guests on, some of which off Discovery Channel's Deadliest Catch. And I think like a lot of East Coast guys who weren't familiar with the West and how that all worked, we saw the show and we're like, wow, you know, some of us thinking we could do that. And on my radio show, I ended up having some guests. Josh Harris was the first guest I had that was off Deadliest Catch fame, and I had nudged him a little bit about, oh, you know, I think I could do that. And he just kind of laughed at me and said, you know, there's guys that can't even handle Alaska in the summertime. And I'm thinking in my head, well, who's this guy think he is, you know? So, but a good guy, you know. We maintained a friendship online after that. But then it wasn't until Nick Tokman, who is actually, we'll hear from him on your show as well, and he spent some time on the Saga in the Northwestern with Sig, and he actually lives kind of local to me. He's from Springfield, Massachusetts, so I had him on my radio show. Well, he thought, heck, I could do it all. He's like, oh, yeah, I know you could do it. So I said, hey, that sounds great. And prior to that, I was a single father since my son was 11. And when he turned 18 and he got himself going in things in life, with the tree work, and he got his feet off the ground. So it kind of gave me a green light to actually go ahead out west and jump on a boat. So Nick Tokman put me in touch with a highliner Dungeness crab guy out of Eureka, California, Patty Davis, who runs the Cynthia. He also owns the Miss Jessie. And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a shot. So I ended up heading out west and had all the money I had, and ended up going into gear work for Patty Davis and learned quite a bit right off the bat. Got yelled at quite a bit right off the bat. And from there, I ended up doing the Southern Opener on the Miss Jessie, and with the captain he had hired under contract to run his boat, and that went pretty well. And then I ended up on Patty's boat, and we were really hitting the crab hard, and I think that taught me the guideline of the speed and what's expected in a successful boat operation, and then that really helped me along. So about March, the crab started clutching, and I had a heart attack. Luckily, I was on land for that, and so I ended up, sitting out the rest of that spring and handling that, and then the doctors cleared me to fish again. And Patty had gotten someone else.
Before you go too far there, so this was your first commercial fishing experience?
Correct. At 40,
at what age?
41.
41. And a heart attack at 41.
Yeah, well, I was in disbelief. I thought I had indigestion. It's not like on TV where someone's keeling over and grabbing their heart and all that. I thought I had indigestion. So I went for a walk around Eureka, and it didn't get better. And then I realized, well, I had sushi the day before, and maybe I got food poisoning from the sushi. So I go to the local hospital, and I'm thinking, I think I have food poisoning. So they take an EKG, nothing. Then they take my blood, and all of a sudden they started freaking out. They were like, "Oh my God, you're having a major heart attack," and I'm laughing at them. I'm like, "Oh, come on, I don't even feel bad at this point." But it turns out, my left coronary artery was 99% blocked, and they gave me a stent. And it turns out it was hereditary cholesterol, because no one could really figure it out. I mean, I'm in shape, commercial fishing, I eat right, so it was a weird thing, and I think that kind of made Patty a little leery about taking me back. But luckily, the first captain, Philip Anthony, who I was on the Miss Jessie, he liked my attitude and liked my work, and he invited me up to Bristol Bay. So Patty ended up getting a new guy, and that was fine. And then that spring, I ended up finishing the season on the Gracia out of Crescent City under Mike Costello. My friend Cole, a friend of mine, got me on. He's taking care of me, looked out for me, and basically my first year, I went from 5% bait to 13% two-man rail. And so it was a pretty good start for me. I've been lucky in the boats I've gotten on. But yeah, so I wrapped up the springtime with him and made my way up to Bristol Bay with Philip Anthony on the Eager Beaver, the Trident fishing boat. So we sold them, and I gotta say the first season was real frustrating. Learning. It's one thing to stack pots and bait jars, but once you get into gill netting, there's a little more skill set involved, and you're starting to see pull-outs and back-outs and pull-throughs and baskets, and man, I'm just trying to go as fast as I can, and it was...
Well, now you stated all those things. Let's explain those things.
Yeah, okay. So when you're pulling in the net, you'll see a fish that, if its head's sticking out, or it looks like it's an easy grab from the head, you basically grab over the top of the head and you have a pick, and you basically slide the net, hopefully without breaking meshes, slide the fish through. Other times they're a back out, which you'll kind of jam your fingers up under the gills and flip the net out that way. It's kind of like a popping motion, and you pop the fish down on deck. And then you get the ones that mess everyone up, the baskets, where you just kind of have to figure it out and whatnot. And so I think I'm still learning. I'm going into my third year, and the second year was much less frustrating. It was actually fun because I actually had a grasp on the skill set and the technique to actually pulling the fish out of the net. So it got a lot more fun. I was also shoved up to the position of deck boss. So that was interesting too, because here I am learning, and now I've got to make someone else think that I know enough to teach them. So, and I think I did, in the respect of safety and general idea. And the kid we brought on is a Puget Sound gill netter, which is a much different ball game, much deeper net, but he did pretty well for his first year. So, it was pretty good. I've had a great experience so far, and looking forward to some more of that. And, hopefully we'll get some Dungy back on too. Another thing I guess I skipped over, I had shoulder surgery after the Dungy fishing. So this was last winter, February, I had the shoulder surgery, and I was right back up in Bristol Bay May 4th, getting ready for the season, and healed up fairly quickly from that. So yeah, pretty happy that went the way it did.
Mm-hmm. And then after Bristol Bay, you run back out to the East Coast. Yeah,
so, I haven't seen my family in a while. And then coincidentally too, my son, who I had brought up in the beginning, he went into the tree stuff, and then he figured, well, he should get into fishing too. So while I was getting ready for this Bristol Bay season, Josh, captain of the Handler,
crab boat,
a big crab boat, yeah, good captain, great crew. They said, well, we need a guy for boatyard, paint and chip and fun stuff like that. So I called my son back in Connecticut, and at the time I was in Washington. I said, well, pack your bags. We're going to get you on a flight tomorrow, and you're going to be working on the boatyard in Anacortes tomorrow. And he did, and that impressed Josh. So he went and got himself a seining gig in Southeast Alaska this past season, which was a huge weight off my shoulders, because my first year Bristol Bay fishing, you know, I'm just constantly thinking about my son causing trouble and getting in trouble with his friends back home, you know, his hometown stuff, and you don't really go too far too fast. So the first year was pretty frustrating, wondering if he was okay. But this year that I knew he was fishing, he was on a boat that Josh trusted the captain and trusted the boat, so made me feel pretty good about it, and pretty good that he liked it and kind of wanted to continue the path that I'm paving at my old age. So I'm sure he'll get a lot more out of the whole fishing industry than I will, just based on his age. But
he's 19 now.
20, just turned 20. Yep. And so yeah, I made my way back here. Met him back in Seattle. We did a little West Coast trip fishing around Yellowstone and whatnot. Then I made my way back here to the East Coast, and I wasn't expecting to be here doing much at all. It was basically just a visit and head back west, and going to get into Puget Sound gill netting. And then I got a call from a buddy who needed a replacement on a lobster boat up here with Paul Terriot, he's a pretty good lobster guy too. He's a hustler, so it was nice to get on a boat with a guy who wanted to work hard and get things done, and it kept me prepped to go back west and work hard too. So yeah, I did about 3 weeks hauling longline lobster pots, and that was a great experience, and made some friends here, and an open invite to come back and work. So it's always nice to get, you know, have that going for you when you have opportunities down the road and into the future.
So at the young age of 41 at the Greenhorn.
Yes.
And then now at the of course adjusted age of 44 then.
Yeah, 44, yeah.
We've done dungeys, salmon, in Bristol Bay.
Yep.
And lobsters.
And lobsters, yep. And now I am gone into a Puget Sound permit for gill netting Puget Sound, which I will be running a boat in a fishery I know nothing about, and with my son, who has never gill netted before. So I've got a lot to prove. I got a lot of work ahead of me, and I have a lot to teach my son about work ethic and about the way it goes in fishing, and the veracity and the will to just keep putting fish on board.
I think that you might have some kind of a bug, because as long as I've known you, every post on your Facebook page is either on the back deck of a boat or with your feet up in a kayak with a fishing pole in your hand.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could pass a mud puddle without wanting to fish in it.
No, you know, and I think I like being on the water more than I like land, and fishing helps the water be less boring, I guess. I love fishing. It always creates an opportunity for possibility. And one thing I've learned about fishing, you never know. So it can be a day where I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to go catch anything. The sun's beating down, water's not really moving, and you know, no great fishing reports. But I've gone out there on days like that and pulled up state records. You know, I've pulled up some pretty big fish. So I'm always excited to go out there. You know, it's like going to the casino and pulling the slot machine, but you don't lose money doing, well, you do lose money fishing. I shouldn't say you don't, but yeah, so it's a great release for me to get out there and to be on the water and to experience it, and then to study habits. I love, whether it be commercial or sports fishing, I love to try to understand the science behind it, what the fish are thinking, the strategies. It really makes it much more interesting to me. And then especially at my age, it's going to be important for me to find a wheelhouse. You know, my body is only going to last so long. And what I've found in this industry, in the short time I've been in it, that is if you have your head on straight and you don't really have a drug problem and court dates, and you have a vehicle and a license and a good work ethic, people kind of want you. And I think the captains will agree with my attitude on deck. I try to stay real positive. I think it can become a cancer when when someone has a bad attitude, and then it carries on to the new guy, and then it starts to weigh in on your weight of the fish you're catching, and that can stream right to the captain, to really take the wind out of everyone's sails. So I think that's been a good point, a strong point for me getting hired on boats is to try to maintain that in the focus, and to always see the big picture and not really worry about the little mundane things, because that's what land is for, I think.
Most guys are not going to go up to Bristol Bay 50 days before the first opener and work on a boat, because there's no pay in that.
No. So
that shows something about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't have a boat, you don't have a fishing season. And I have a relationship with the captain where he's my friend. It's not just a guy who's paying me, a guy who's invited me up to go fishing. I mean, he's my friend, and he'll always say that it's everyone's a free agent, people try to poach me here and there to jump on their boats, and there's enticing things, these highliners with the D permit and this and that. I mean, we're on a 2-man deck with no D, and we still hold our own. If you put us against other boats with no D and a 2-man deck, I think we do pretty good. And I think we have a bright future ahead of us, whether it be myself obtaining a D so we can get more net on the boat, maybe leasing one somewhere down the line. But I'd like to get the same guys coming back along with myself, and to develop something, maybe upgrade his boat, and to stay with him. I mean, to me, fishing's a job, but it's also the camaraderie, the friendship, and the bonds that you make. They're important, and I think you can roll the dice to try to find a boat, but that's hard to do too. I mean, there's a saying, like, don't leave fish to find fish. You know what you have, you know what you're working with, and with this situation, now that I am deck boss, I think it creates my own destiny. And if we can do that as a team and make some more money and make some more progress together as fishermen, that's a win for me. The way my friends are taken care of, and I'm taken care of, and we make a good name for ourselves. I mean, the yard we're in is just some big names in the yard we're in, Arnsted's and Ludwig's, and some guys who know how to put fish on a boat, and we're just surrounded by mavericks, and when you see that, and it really motivates you to not just jump on one of those boats, but to make the boat I'm on like that, and I think that that's important. I think it's important, and I wouldn't want to be known as a boat jumper either. I like to build something and then come back the following season and build on it some more, and I think it makes things better for everyone all the way around.
Speaking of building on it, let's just take a chance real quick to ask our listeners to share, like, and subscribe to the podcast, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Galley Stories, it's great. It's a motivator, especially if you would like to get into the industry. The guests that I've heard are just a wealth of information and kind of help you understand what it takes. I mean, I just kind of jumped in on it. I had a little help because I knew some people through radio. But at the end of the day, it's all about showing up. And I think with the guests that you have, it really gives a great example of what to expect. More so if you watch the TV show of all, whether it be Wicked Tuna or Deadliest Catch or any of these, even on Netflix, I think it gives you a window into the world, but it's more the glorified part of it. Your stories that you have on this program, I mean, you get the full story and the hardships and the good times. So I think that's important, especially for people who want to get involved with the industry, to get a real eye on what's going on.
So with that said, the best way to support us is to subscribe to the podcast. Mm-hmm. And if possible, leave a comment, even on iTunes as an example.
Sure.
Really helps grow. But anyway, on to the next portion. When you first started going out, mm-hmm. obviously 41, heart attack probably scared you a little bit. But
I think I'm still in disbelief.
let's talk about the first time that you were scared out on a commercial boat.
Yeah. The first time I was, well, going through the bars in Eureka, in Humboldt Bar is an experience in itself. I think I defer some of that fear to the captain that I chose to get on with. The guy's been doing it for so long, and I think if you do get scared in those seas, I think I kind of defer to the fact, well, this guy knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for 30 years, and he's still alive. And I think that helps with the fear. As far as the biggest fear I've ever had was Bristol Bay 2 summers ago. My now roommate and a fellow deckhand and a friend of mine was on a boat. We were up in the Noosh, and this was the summer before this one, 2000.
Nushagak.
Yep, Nushagak, in Bristol Bay, and it was the season before this. And we were fishing, another day in the office, a little nautical that day, And the summer before this one, I mean, it was a treat this past summer. The summer before was just blowing and 40-mile-an-hour winds and waves and chop, and it was an ugly summer. But we got a call on the radio that my buddy Cole's boat was gone, and the EPIRB was going off. And we're thinking, oh, man, who knows? Who knows what's going on? We tried to stay optimistic. And then we heard people on the radio calling to them, Coast Guard calling to them, Coast Guard asking us what was going on, and no one heard from them. And then we saw the C-130 fly over. And usually when that happens, things are at a pretty bad point, and I thought I'd lost my friend. So that was tough. I mean, the whole boat was shook. And, well, the happy ending to the story was that apparently their plotter had a EPIRB feature on it. So in the rough weather, the whole plotter had fallen over, and the EPIRB button had been hit in the process. So their actual EPIRB that's on the hull or on the house of the boat didn't actually get knocked off. It was the transponder on the plotter. And they came back on the radio like, what's going on, guys? We were ready to wring their necks. I mean, man, we all had tears in our eyes. And I think, to me, that was the scariest time I've ever had fishing. I mean, I've had scary times with lines flying across and, jumping out of a bite and an errant wave washing over the wall. And there's an element of being scared there. But the choice you make to go out there, I mean, you kind of make your peace every time you go out, and that's what fishing taught me. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'd skip the I love yous and the, quick message back to friends and family and whatnot. But after seeing, from my very first season, there's always been a loss. When I was Dungeness crabbing, a guy that actually taught me some knots at the boatyard, it was a Super Bowl Sunday, and we were coming in, and they were heading out. And we waved to him as they went by, and 10 minutes later, he was gone. 2 of them went over, the stack fell over, and one guy was lucky enough to grab a buoy, and my buddy there, he went over, and he was never seen again. The sea really doesn't give too many people back. And then after that, Bristol Bay, another one, and here and there. I mean, so I feel like it's something that we accept it, and then, but it really helped me to convey, I think, to loved ones how I feel, because I don't think I really was like that prior. And then once you see what's going on out there, and it makes you think, And then I also took some of that safety stuff back to sports fishing. Now in the kayak, I wear a VHF radio. I always have a life jacket on, and it's ironic because in the commercial industry I've never worn a life jacket, and I don't know any boats surrounding me that do, and it surprises me. But being that I haven't been in the industry for 10 years or whatever, I ask, well, why aren't we wearing these? They say, oh, well, if you're gill netting, it gets caught, and the little pieces, even the horseshoes you wear over it, stuff gets caught on things, or I've heard it all from uncomfortable to dangerous. So I kind of just go with the status quo of the boat, and I don't know, I think deep down inside, I think wearing one would be good, but I guess that realization hasn't hit me enough yet to really put one on. And I'm not really not sure why that is in the commercial industry, where it's so emphasized in the sports and recreational industry. And I even try to lead by example in that respect, because I know there's a lot of kids that want to go out in a kayak, and it's obviously easier to go do that than it is to be commercial fishing. So I think that's more immediate for the kids to see, and people getting into fishing to see, is the safety aspect of it. Especially, Long Island Sound, where I'm from, it's like a mini version of Bristol Bay. And what I mean by that is the tide is constantly ripping one way or the other. There is no float around, easy water. It's you're ripping a few knots one way or a few knots the other. And Long Island Sound's a lot like that, because we are kind of an estuary from the Atlantic Ocean. And so a lot of the guys going out in Long Island Sound to fish for striped bass and that kind of stuff, they won't pay attention to certain things like a north wind versus tide, full moon tides. I mean, there's a lot of safety aspects in the recreational world that we're way more in tune to and trying to convey to new anglers on that level. Mm-hmm. So,
well, tides are a huge deal in Bristol Bay.
Huge.
Sometimes you can't go to a river because of the tide. Can't get into the river.
Oh, yeah. Especially, there's places in the Nushagak and whatnot too, where there'll be sandbars that are miles long. Like, you literally have to go all the way out into the bay to turn around to get to the other side to get to anchorage. So you make your choices, where you are. If you're on fish, then you kind of have to resign to the fact that it's going to take you a while to get out of there if you do. And and I've heard stories in Bristol Bay, because it's not like it's mappable. I mean, the water is chocolate milk, and the sandbars move constantly. So it's not a place where you can just rely on your navionics or rely on your charts. I mean, you can get a general idea and you follow your track lines. But, my captain's told me stories about being up on a swell and seeing dry sand underneath it and wondering if the boat's going to make it to the bottom. And luckily water will fill in, and we've bellied up. I've put some dings in the prop myself, definitely guilty of that. But you got 20-year guys that are bumping in the sand. So, yeah, it's a tricky area. And a lot of that is in a miniature way or a far reduced way. And Long Island Sound is like that as well, with sandbars and the moving water where it's constantly moving. So it's relatable in that respect. But
and it moves quick. I mean,
oh, it's really fast. Yeah, if you go over in Bristol Bay, it's going to be real hard to get you back. I realize our boats are only 32 feet long, and some are even jet boats. But at that rate of speed, and then with the churning and the sand, you can fill up with debris and sand, and
your boots can become weights in a very quick heartbeat.
Very, very quick.
I would liken the tide to taking a very quick, deep breath and exhaling really quick. That's kind of how those tides move. Mm-hmm. Versus a regular standard breathing, just that quick. They move so quick that.
Yeah, it's really hard to describe to someone who hasn't seen it. And it's a lot of water. I mean, you're looking at 16-foot up and downs. Like here on the East Coast, I was asking the captain about it. It's like back there we have a big and small high tide. That's not the case here. Maybe if you go up towards like Newfoundland, I understand there's really big tides north of Maine. Even Maine has some pretty big tides. But yeah, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's a big reason why once we launch, we don't go back to shore. We don't dock. There is no slips. You're once you launch, that's it. You're tying up to tenders and offloading, getting your fuel, water, and food, and right back to it. There's no safe place to belly up too much in there unless you're going back to the cannery, back up river. We don't really like to go that far if we want to be ready for the next opener, as openers are whenever they like to place them usually.
Mm-hmm. All right then, Jesse, how about some of the good times that you've had out there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been real lucky. Every boat I've gotten on has been a good boat with a good crew and a good captain. But yeah, I think the highlights were out with Patty Davis on the Cynthia, and he, like I said, he has been at it for a long time in this industry. He'd be a great interview too for the podcast. But We put on, he said, as many crab as he's ever had in his boat at once. And we probably had like 33,000 pounds on that boat within the first 20 hours of the opener. I mean, we were flipping, bridle full pots on beach gear so we could do it real fast. And we would just repeat strings until we stopped seeing crab. And that was a great moment to know that I was on the boat with a guy who'd been at it for so long, and to be there at that moment where he had the most crab he had ever had on his boat, where we actually had to get 3 different buyers to take all of our crab, and that was a great experience for me to see that success pretty immediately. And then following up to that, back on with Philip Anthony in Bristol Bay. And that was my first year there, and he had his personal best, the most fish he had ever had on his boat. No D, 2-man deck. He jumped down off the flybridge and helped pick 2, but, and then at the end of the season, it was just me and him. We lost a guy around the 20th of July, and we put on 36,000 pounds ourselves. And, and he had his personal best. And that made me feel real good that I could be a part of that and see that through for him, because it's really good. I think it's great to see your captain come through with a good year, especially they've been taking care of you, because I've never been ripped off or, promised money I never got. And heck, I'm pretty much a 20%, 10%er on this boat. I don't get stuff taken off, so I'm real fortunate. And to see those victories, I think, to me, thus far, has been a couple of the greatest moments that I've seen out there. And I'm looking forward to another one now, running my own boat with my kid, and I'm really hoping we can make a notch in that fishery and get some great moments there too, and especially fishing with my son. That's something really cool, and something I thought was going to take a lot longer to have happen. So I think that's going to also be when we first launch and get out there in Puget Sound together. I think that's going to be another great moment coming up. So I've seen some pretty cool stuff. And then I also love, I think some great stuff that I see out there is the biodiversity. Coming from growing up, my dad being in the marine sciences and going out and seeing all the wildlife. I haven't seen more wildlife in my entire life than fishing. I've seen the entire North California coastline and just about every sea critter you can see out there. And in Alaska, I've been blessed to, I saw a wolverine while I was sports fishing up there. And just to see the things you see that 90% of Americans or people around the world, they don't see this stuff. And I think to really enjoy that moment while you're out there too, and realize that you're doing something that 0.003% of the world does, and there's something to that. There's a lot of pride in that. And
clearly you got your passion from those non-Disneyland trips out going 100 miles out in the river with your dad.
Yeah.
Do you think your son gets that from you too?
I think so. I'd like to think so. He's a go-getter. He wants to prove himself, and he's always trying to impress and work really hard. And I hope he saw that work ethic coming from me. The enjoyment he definitely gets. He did Southeast Alaska this year, and it blew his mind, the things he saw. In fact, he's waiting for me right now to go pick him up and head back west, because he can't wait to jump on another boat. And he doesn't have the sports fishing in him like I do. But he definitely has the wanderlust and the going out there and working hard and being successful. And he's really taken to the ocean. Never got really seasick and really adjusted to the big waves and that he saw while he was out there. And he's excited to go get some more. And if that excitement comes from me, then I'm happy he got that for sure. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Well, you've spoken briefly about where your immediate future is going to be going for fishing.
Sure.
Where do you want it to go? Where do you see yourself going?
Well, Yeah, I'm open. I'm really really open. I may end up in Florida stone crabbing next winter. I've gotten offers from that. I seem to get offers where I go too to jump on boats. I'd love to do the pulling the albacore out west too. That looks like a lot of fun. The albacore fishing. But yeah, I leave it open. It's all open ended for me. Bristol Bay is definitely in my schedule. It's not going to stop that one fishery. I know. I'm trying to really move forward with this boat with the progress we've made, and I want to develop that. And the captain is happy to have me back, and as long as that's going on, I think that's a good thing. The Puget Sound fishing, I think, will also be something. Buying into a permit and a boat and like I said, it is a new fishery for me. I understand the concepts of obviously and the district lines and all that fun stuff, but it's something totally new for me, and I think if I can get out there and my kid can get out there, and I think that's something we'll be a repeat customer on as well. The Dungeness crab I'd like to do. I'd like to keep doing it. At my age, I really have to be conscientious about my moves. Coming off the shoulder surgery, feel pretty good now. After the surgery, did Bristol Bay and did the lobstering, and it seemed pretty good. So I think I'm definitely going to try to hit the Northern Opener for California this year for Dungies as well. But yeah, whatever sticks. It's like throwing spaghetti up on the wall and seeing what sticks. And the boats that I've seen and been on so far, I would never mind returning to them again, and those captains, because they were good to me, and we had a successful time out there. And so yeah, I kind of leave it open ended, other than Bristol Bay, which I definitely know is on the table.
What about you've heard me ask it all the time? Advice for young guys coming in. Obviously, you support it. You're encouraging your son to do so.
Yes.
But what's your advice for someone that doesn't have a father that has connections?
Well, you just got to go do it. Being from the East Coast and what we saw on TV and this and that, it seems so impossible because we don't know what ports to go to. We don't know which docks to walk. We don't even know about dock walking. Maybe for out here you do, but to put yourself in a vehicle or an airplane, go to Washington, Oregon, California, and to put yourself out there, it's a big deal. But nothing's going to come to you by waiting for something to happen for you. So if you're like a kid and maybe you didn't go to college, maybe you're just doing trades, or maybe you're just, you're working check to check in a small town somewhere, well, you got to make a commitment to yourself to break out of that bubble and to go see it for yourself. So if you can save enough money and pack up your car and not be afraid to sleep in your car, and beat on doors on the dock walking and make yourself known that you want to work hard. And I think a lot of that comes from don't think that let's say you get hired, but you start off doing gear work, which isn't a paid part of the job, but you have to show that veracity and the intent and the will to go fast from that point on. So what you do in even the boatyard working on gear, it'll show a lot to the skippers. It helps to learn knots, obviously, learn a half hitch, a clove, and bowling, and try to have some of those under your belt. And the splicing will probably come as you go, but you just got to go. Just got to go and get there. And I know there's a lot of sites that, you can post on Facebook, oh, I'm looking for a job doing this, that, and the other thing, but that doesn't really show a captain anything. Like my son, I may have had an in for him, but he was the only one that could put himself in a plane in Hartford, Connecticut, fly into Seattle and not even knowing what he's doing, and then take a taxi to Anacortes and walk into a situation he knows nothing about. And I think that shows well to a captain. So if you are willing to make that initial step, to get out of your comfort zone, to save up a little bit of money to work for free doing gear work for a little bit, and to wait for that paycheck when the fish get on board, yeah, it shows a lot. And I think that's the beginning of it. Everything else kind of falls into place. It fell into place for me once the introduction was made. And if you think you got it in you, there's only one way to find out if you do. You just got to go do it. No one's going to do it for you, and these opportunities aren't going to land on your lap. And there are plenty of fishing jobs. There really are. It's really, you can't be too picky. I would advise to be careful what boat is asking you to join them. I mean, I've been offered jobs by captains who are cracking open 30 packs at 8 a.m. And you know what? That didn't seem very good to me. Safety is obviously a big thing, and you want to keep yourself safe, and you want to make sure you're getting on a safe boat. And you may not want to jump on the first boat you see. Always look at your surroundings and look at who you're dealing with, and even if you get a bad initial vibe, maybe keep moving. But definitely have your wits about you. Be willing to work hard, and safety is the number one concern, no matter where you go.
Okay, Jesse. That was pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Thank you.
You have any final words?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing all the great guests you have coming up on the East Coast.
It is kind of a battle, isn't it? We've had all these guys from the West Coast.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get a little East Coast version.
Yeah, and it's a different culture out here. Different rules, different mindset, and obviously a different culture. We share the same values, obviously, and I think there's a lot of shared experiences, but it's a whole new animal in the East Coast, the fisheries, the choices. It's just a whole new animal, and hopefully your listeners will get a chance to understand where we come from. Just like the West Coast guys were all foreign to us. We had no idea, other than the TV show. Well, now maybe there's a chance to understand where we're coming from that isn't from Perfect Storm and Wicked Tuna and Goodwill Hunting,
All great things.
Mm-hmm.
All great things. But all right, so before we do go off, though, I want to, again, encourage our listeners to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Galley Stories, yeah. And, Podbean is the app that if you want to go straight to the...
We actually have a Patreon account there, too. If you click on the SOS,
mm-hmm.
so that's Share Our Stories.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a link there now to a Patreon account we just set up. If you really wanted to help us expand and go out to other areas to record stories, not begging for anything here, just supplement. But.
Yeah, I mean, if you really do enjoy what you're hearing, I know I did. I've enjoyed hearing from quite a bit of everybody, and you get quite a bit of everyone. And even from the East Coast here, we're gonna.
Oh, I'm gonna have you tell the story.
What's up?
You listen to Muncie.
Yes.
Talk about
flaking. Yeah.
Now let's hear this story. So he listened to an episode of Muncie.
Yeah. And Muncie is talking about gill netting here on the East Coast, which is even way different than gill netting on the West Coast because it's doing way down deep, and you're setting multiple nets up at once. And he was talking about flaking the net. And prior to hearing that episode with Muncie, I was out in the lobster boat, and I'm hauling gear, which means I'm stacking the gear as they're coming up. And I'm grabbing the pot, and I'm ready to go. And he goes, "No, it's okay, I flaked it for you." And I'm looking at him like, and I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to look stupid. So I'm like, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, okay. And I ran the pot back. So what he meant by that was he took some coil from the line, he spread it out so I would have room to run the gear back. We're talking about long lining pots.
And you ran it back fast, right?
Yeah.
And what did he say to that?
He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, on cocaine or something." I was like, "This is what you want?" He goes, "Yeah, I just never seen it before." So, yeah, the terminology, which coming from the East Coast, I hadn't done any real commercial fishing out here. I've been on my buddy's dragger a couple times, but to hear flake in the net, and then when I hear Muncie's story, okay, that's what he was talking about. Yeah. So yeah, but you find that everywhere. I mean, even if you're dungy fishing in California, compared to Oregon and Washington, everyone's got their own little terms and things. Like you'll be from California, go to Washington, not know what the guy in Washington.
Is it a buoy or a bumper?
A bag, yeah. Give me the bag. Give me the bag. What do you mean, the buoy? Yeah. So, Yeah, there's the terms are interesting, and then the knots. Every captain's got his own knot. That's another piece of advice I'd like to give to people coming into it. You may think you know how something works. Like you may think, okay, well, I'm gonna do a barrel knot on tying shots together or something like that. That's not everyone's program. The captain's program is the program, and I found, even if you are a repeat offender and you're out on another fishery that, but a different captain, you can't really go in there with the mindset of the last captain, the last boat. You really just have to come into it as a greenhorn and understand what they're looking for, because they're not trying to learn a better method with the years they have on them. They don't want to hear it from a new guy either. Yeah. So that's another piece of advice. Take everything you already know and throw it out the window. Take your skill sets with you. Obviously, you're not tying skills and your seamanship. But other than that, be completely open-minded, because every captain's different, every program's different, every knot is different.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Well, thanks again, guys, for tuning in to another installment. And if that is all for you, Jesse?
Yeah. I hope everyone listens and shares and likes and comments and keep this show going, because as some of these guys get older, we're not going to get another chance to hear them again. And this is a great way to catalog the life and culture, past, present, and future of how people are living at sea.
I can't even say anything else. We'll see you guys next time.